Tonight, we've got a special guest. Chris Yellowstone Ritter is a comedy writer. You may have seen his stuff on Comedy Central, Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and he's a baseball historian. So he's teamed up with Hall of Famer Raleigh Fingers, and they put out Rollie'S, Follies. Indeed, it's a pleasure to have now Chris Yellowstone Ritter to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, John. Great to be here.
Well, in going through Rollie'S, Follies, I noticed that you guys have weaved around the various baseball eras. We have stuff in here about current players, players from the 80s. We have files and dossiers in here on some of these superstars. I was just amazed with one particular dossier, Albert Pujols.
Yeah, we're always looking to find facts no one else is thinking up. And I was looking at Fat Albert, as we call him, and we wonder about things like who can pitch him well, who can't. We go back to the early history of when Tampa Bay tried to sign him, and they refused. They didn't want to come up with the money, and the scout quit. He just couldn't deal with that organization. And, Albert went off and played a little independent baseball in Kansas, and then the Cardinals signed him up, so good for them.
Well, I wanted to find out about the factoids. The chapter on Piniella and Hargrove.
Yeah, I was just doing research on Piniella and Hargrove. I noticed all these similarities. But that's just kind of how my mind thinks. You see weird, odd similarities, and you start writing them down. It's like the Lincoln-Kennedy similarities.
Yeah.
And I just noticed that Hargrove and Piniella had all this stuff happen that was similar. Yeah. And they've never really crossed paths, but they've been everywhere the other guy has been. It's how the mind thinks at 3 in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just mentioned the differences in chapters. Hey, some are totally hilarious, and others are, whoa, these guys are making a really fine point about a sports stat and how important it is to the game.
Thank you. That was the goal. Whenever you or I are shopping for a baseball book, I think we leave the store going, oh, I wish I could have picked up another book. Maybe it doesn't exist. And so I was thinking of a book that had hilarious stories, but also weird statistics, and then some keen observations maybe no one's ever made before, putting it all together.
Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb.
I'll take them both.
You'll take them both?
I'll put them both in the team. The funny thing about these guys is, in 1950, they got all the sports writers together, and they said, who are the best players in the history of baseball? And it was Ty Cobb. And both of them had hung up their cleats. Neither of them played after 1950. But in the course of 50 to 2000, the children grew up and they revised and said Babe Ruth's the best player of all time. Mm-hmm. They just revised their history, and maybe they gave Ruth credit for home runs became more important, and Ruth was a great hurler as well for a brief time with Boston before they, liquidated him. But Ty Cobb was, they played a different game too. Ty Cobb prospered before 1920, and he was pretty good after. But that was two different sports in a way. Yeah. So I like them both.
Well, Chris Yellowstone Ritter, I want to thank you for taking us beyond the game. And indeed, there's all kinds of stuff in Rollie'S, Follies. So I want to thank you for...
You're very welcome. That went by very fast.
Yeah, it did.